Welcome back, everyone. I'm Clayton Captain Flowers Reigns, and all I need for this cast is a few good taters and Aiden Zyrene Moon.
Ooh, I'd be down for some tater tots right now.
I absolutely would be too. But right now, we got to clear off the Rift for our second match of the day, Cloud9 versus Team Envy. Cloud9 returned from Rift Rivals after having the least convincing performance of the 3 North American teams attending.
Yeah, which isn't completely strange, to be honest, because there was some overhyping behind Cloud9 coming into Rift Rivals, because right before they left for the tournament, they had just taken down TSM, but keep in mind, this team is just barely above 500 with a 6-4 match record sitting at 4th place right now. And a few C9 members have kind of been vocal about how they were sick on the trip and how it's still been kind of, something they've been getting over. And that's one of the reasons that we saw an underperforming bottom lane and Nisqy in Berlin. But ultimately, though, it was pretty masked by the fact that Jensen just showed consistent mid lane dominance still.
Which seems to be a mismatch. If we're being quite honest, coming into this series against Team Envy, they're still trying to find the winning formula between Pyrian and Nisqy, while Apollo and Hakuho have been a rock in the bottom half of the map.
Yeah, Apollo has been playing incredibly well this split, but he's still fighting off old impressions of his play and taking down Nisqy, a guy who's consistently been a top 3 AD carry in North America, would further make Apollo's case for being one of the best bottom laners. But it's also important to note that Team Envy are tied for 5th right behind Cloud9 at 5-5 and just need 1 win to catch up to that team. So taking a series off of Cloud9 could be Envy's opportunity to prove they're one of the top 5 teams.
Despite any challenges Envy may bring, Jensen is ready to perform today.
Every day.
All the time.
Envy seems to be really strong in the early game, but they seem to falter when it comes to playing together as a team. So I'm not really too worried about playing against Envy. We're a pretty good team when it comes to later stages of the game. So as long as the game is somewhat even, or we don't fall too far behind, or we have a good early game, I think we'll smash them.
Confident words from the star mid laner at Cloud9, but let's go ahead and check out the starting lineups. On the blue side, it's Cloud9. Impact in the top lane, Contractz in the jungle, Jensen mid, Sneaky bottom, Smoothie right beside him supporting, and Coach Reaper.
What's Contractz checking out there? Anyway, on the red side, it's going to be Team Envy, Seraph with the finger guns, going to be LirA not knowing what to do. Nisqy will be starting in the mid lane, Apollo hoping that the Sun God's looking over him today with Hakuho and support and Coach Violet.
If you would have told me in Spring Split 2017 that Cloud9 and Envy were going head-to-head, and if Envy wins it, they would be tied in overall record with Cloud9, I'd have said, you're crazy, based on how these teams looked in the previous split. Yeah. But Summer Split has been an entirely different story. Cloud9, a bit on the decline compared to what they were in Spring, and Envy has really stepped things up.
Yeah, Envy is kind of the, there's always been potential there, right? LirA came in, and everybody's like, oh, he's the best jungler in the league right now, was actually the #1 jungler last split, in terms of overall voting, and got that NALCS All-Pro team #1, but it was just, can he carry everybody on his team? They have a new mid laner, they have 2 new mid laners that they've been going between, and they've been trying to find consistency there. But I gotta say, Apollo is the one that jumps out to me, because he has been playing phenomenally well alongside Hakuho here. So this bottom lane is really a place that you can get some advantages as Envy, and we've been seeing things like Kalista be first picked, have a high priority, so bottom laners are now very effective in this game and can carry with Tristana and the likes.
Yeah, and is Cloud9 going to be at their full potential to deal with Envy here today? Talking about what you mentioned with some of the players feeling sick from Rift Rivals, wasn't exactly the best in terms of their physical condition there. Also, Sneaky had some hit or miss moments like we talked about. Can he be a weakness for Cloud9? Could that be the Achilles heel that may be exploited if Sneaky's not on his top game against Apollo?
Man, I feel like there's always been fingers pointed around on a Cloud9 team. It's like, oh, it's this guy. Oh, this guy's not performing well. Oh, yeah. It goes back and forth. But I don't think there's ever been a time where you go, Sneaky is kind of the weaker link on Cloud9. And I actually don't think that's still the case. I think he's still incredibly consistent. And even though he had a little bit of a faltering week last week, there's travel, there's illness, there's sickness. There's a lot of Johns I'm throwing out there right now for Sneaky. But I do think that up against Apollo, Apollo is making a case for himself to be one of the top AD carries, but they've both been incredibly consistent this split.
And seeing those two go head-to-head, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a good matchup to watch in this game, and at the same time, the action in the mid lane, Jensen always steps up. One of those top 3 mid laners in North America. We talked about how good this guy is, how he's the one who always seems to be making the moves, and whatever Envy is going to be doing in the mid lane, it has to be a very strong effort if they want to go toe-to-toe with Jensen and be able to survive that onslaught.
Yeah, and today it will be Nisqy in the mid lane instead of Pyrian. They have still been swapping back and forth despite having the European mid laner in there. And I want to see how he does up against Jensen, who has been the most dominant mid laner so far in the split. Even though Cloud9 is at 6-4, Jensen has kind of been dragging some dead bodies through through all the rubble, making sure they don't lose some of these games because he has some of the best laning stats. He's overall one of the best performing mid laners in the whole league. I would say the best right now, top 2 in most people's books. But I definitely think that he's got his competition kind of cut out for him here in terms of Nisqy has to really perform against Jensen. Because if you lose this mid lane against C9, which they put a lot of resources into with Contractz, you're going to lose the game.
See, the player camera is a little bit different. Envy focusing up, getting themselves prepared. Cloud9 all playing with their fidget spinners in unison. I didn't even know Cloud9 had fidget spinners now. I remember somebody mentioning that on Twitter a while back. I think it was Pobelter actually made a post about how they should make a Cloud9 fidget spinner. And now they've got them. You got to give me one of those, Irene.
Man, yeah, I mean, Phoenix One was handing them out like candy. I literally have 3 Phoenix One fidget spinners on my desk.
Yeah, there's so many of them.
They're in boxes still. It's like, no.
Yeah, there you go. See, camera guys are with us. Phoenix One set the standard. Now all the other LCS teams have to step up their fidget spinner game.
See, this is the life of a pro. You have to make tough decisions. You know, it's like super salad, but for a pro, it's like fidget spinner in the hand or hand warmer.
That's what makes it tough.
Yeah, you saw Impact there was like, hold on, I got to put it down. Smoothie, hand warmer guy himself. But yep. But for no fidget spinner team, Team Envy, sad life.
Sad life, absolutely.
And there's none up here. I have none.
Yeah, neither one of us has a fidget spinner, so what are we supposed to do? We could have all sorts of... Hey, yep. Show us what you got, maybe. Fidget spinners, free advertising, look at that. Hey, anyway, we're in a champion select for the first game here. Cloud9 going to be on blue side, Team Envy on the red. Cloud9 deciding to ban away LeBlanc first as Envy goes ahead and takes care of the mandatory red side ban, removing Zach from the pool.
Yeah, Caitlyn also jumps up in terms of mandatory red side ban. You would also say that Galio is one that gets pushed back and forth, and so I'm seeing so far pretty standard bans. I expect Caitlyn to come out next. Yep. And now, where does Elise fall?
Will she make it past? Sometimes you will see that happen.
Ooh,
but Jax banned away, focusing on that top lane a little bit. We saw a Jax ban yesterday as well. So a little bit more tendency towards playing that champion that was out of the meta for so long.
And yeah, I want to talk about this as well because Cloud9 is playing Impact in the top lane here. And he actually only got to play 2 games at Rift Rivals out of the 6 that they played. It was mainly Ray starting in the top lane. So I want to see what Impact is capable of here because he has actually not been having that great of a split so far. And it's been kind of, you know, that whole back and forth. People are now no longer complaining like, oh, Ray's playing. If they had Impact, they would have won, right? It's no longer that because Impact is playing and they're losing game 1s, then subbing Ray in for 2 and 3 and winning the series afterwards. So these top laners have become more comparable, but Cloud9's problems overall that are losing them games have just been coming from pretty much all directions.
Well, the Kalista and the Jax being the last 2 bans early on means that the Spider Queen does slip through, and that's instantly picked up by Cloud9.
And I think that's not as big of an issue as like a Kalista falling through, so I really like this ban from Team Envy. It's actually something that was adopted in the LCK after the Kalista Rakan combo went off. Everybody's now Kalista plus Thresh, Kalista plus anything, because Kalista does Baron incredibly quickly, and when people start up Baron, and we've been seeing it today on both streams, when you start with a Baron with Kalista, it's almost impossible to steal it away. The chances are no longer 50-50 on the smite. I would say it's more like 80-20, and you are pretty much outnumbered at that point because the Kalista Ren will outdamage your smite. And the beauty of starting up a Baron with Kalista is that she has such great turning power as well with the Fate's Call. You can always throw your support into the bulk of the enemy to start a fight and turn off the Baron. So her power there makes her very versatile in those situations. But we won't be seeing her in this game, just describing why she's so strong in the meta.
I mean, it makes sense. It's a champion that we all thought was completely stuck in the dumpster for so long, and now it's seen this sudden resurgence. You wonder what she did to climb out of there.
And Oscar the Grouch, man, just always comes back.
New Kalista skin, 2018. Team Envy, though, they're going to go ahead and grab both of their bot laners early on, picking up the Xayah and the Thresh, as the response from Cloud9 is to answer with a bot lane of their own, Tristana and Braum.
Yeah, I actually think that's a big outdraft there from Cloud9. Tristana with the great scaling, also great lane, up against Xayah is pretty decent, and then the fact that you have Braum will block the pass-through of the Xayah Feathers and means that you don't have that same impactful team fighting that you're looking for here. But Cloud9 with the Elise, I'm looking for a powerful 2-on-2 top lane here. Renekton comes to mind. Having something that shoves the wave up, that Impact can be aggressive on, pairing that with Elise means you're playing to the top side of the map.
Let's see what the teams decide to focus on in the second part of the bans. The last pick in the first phase was Syndra for Team Envy. A lot of times you don't see the mid laner picked in that first round of picks, but they decided it was enough of a power pick to risk it, risk maybe getting counterpicked a little bit there, and secure that for Nisqy. Gnar banned away by Cloud9, Taliyah by Envy.
Yeah, don't want Seraph to have that kind of split pusher. I wonder if they'll ban away Jace or something of the likes as well. The Jax ban already been targeted up at Seraph. I assume that means Renekton might be coming through for Cloud9 so they can pair it with the Elise. But I think Seraph might be able to take that Renekton for himself.
Zed ban from Team Envy.
I was about to say that I think Jensen might throw down against Nisqy. Because he picked up the Syndra, I would be okay with Jensen playing Echo, Fizz, Zed, any of those assassins into the Syndra to try and just make Nisqy have a bad day. Because he gets so much attention, or Jensen gets so much attention from Contractz. When you play assassins, you have to worry about your wave clear, which most of those champions are pretty decent at, but also your vision control. And Contractz sets him up very heavily, so I would be fine with an Echo pick here, because I do think that Jensen has the best Echo in the NALCS.
His Echo has been able to work some miracles before. Have to see if that's what they want to go with this time around. Rek'Sai, the final ban here for this game as Gragas is locked in for Envy. And the fun part about that one, that's a flex pick, so they don't know if that's going to go jungle or that's going to go top side.
And I actually think second round red side first pick, going for Gragas is super good because people are picking their AD carry support very early on red side. Then they're picking their mid laner, banning away 2 mid laners that are counters to it, and then you pick a flex for your jungle / top, so you have something that can be very versatile there. And I like that.
The Renekton that you predicted does get locked in for Cloud9 to go with that Elise. We've seen that pairing be so capable and so strong in the past. We're going to get to see it again this game from Cloud9. Still thinking about what they want Jensen on there in the mid lane. Hovering around Yasuo for a second, hanging out on Corki for a little bit, and Corki will get locked in.
It's boring city for the Corki. Yep, no, none of that risky stuff. No Echo, nothing like that. But we'll see what he takes here summoner spell-wise, because the Corki we've seen today take Teleport, we've seen it take Cleanse. I think Exhaust is the superior summoner spell up against Syndra, up until she gets like increased range and stuff like that on her ultimate, which requires you to have max rank of the ultimate once her passive gives her that. So we'll see, but then that means the Syndra typically takes Cleanse herself to remove Exhaust and try to outplay that way.
Plus, we remember when Corki originally became mid lane meta, mid lane popular back however long ago that was, it was when most of the time you were seeing a couple teleports mid, and Corki was able to take Exhaust there because the package mobility still gives him, it's not global by any means, but it's a lot of ability to move back and forth and make really big rotations, really impactful rotations without the extra summoner.
Yeah, it gives you side lane pressure, gives you 1-3-1. But Cloud9, great siege composition, great skirmishing on the top side of the map. Renekton plus Elise, very, very potent combo. You land the Renekton stun or cocoon, the other one's going to follow up, and then you're going to be able to pick up a kill. And Seraph, last pick that he took was that Shen. So this is kind of a composition that it's hard to dive into, but I feel like you don't really dive with Cloud9's team unless you're playing the Renekton. So it's going to kind of be siege lines, and whoever gets an advantage early will try to set up and try to have their split pusher take over as they try to take turrets down. So it's kind of like a 4-1 for both teams with some team fighting, but no real dive. Just try to get some picks.
I mean, with Shen and Thresh, they're so good at peeling away and defending as they kite back and protect their AD carry, and Xayah is just an AD carry that was honestly designed to kite back, leave that feather line as she goes back, pull it back, root you, and then put the last couple of nails in the coffin. So Team Envy, very capable of handling those situations if Cloud9 puts themselves in a spot like that. But as you mentioned, yeah, you've got a Renekton, you've got an Elise, you can make picks and jump on people like that in the early game, but that's more talking about smaller skirmishes, things like that, 2v2s, 3 versus 3s. When it gets into the team fights, you've got a Tristana, you don't got to go crazy.
Yeah, and I feel like if they're able to exploit Seraph in the top lane, though, Cloud9 could look for a large advantage there. Renekton is a champion that can really snowball a game, and it's one of the reasons that he's kind of been back in the meta. I mean, he originally came in as the Camille counter, and then people were like, oh, wait, he's good. Then Gargoyle Stoneplate became a thing, and it's like, oh, our top lane bruiser that builds 2 HP items now becomes our top lane tank in fights and does a lot of damage to these squishy carries. So I think if you can snowball the top lane, which is a very viable strategy in this situation for Impact, you could take over the game as Cloud9.
Quick update for the audience on exactly where we're at here. Looks like Nisqy did not load into game initially, so we're addressing that issue as the game enters into a pause, and hopefully we'll be back into the action as soon as possible. But going into this one, talking about Nisqy, looking at that matchup he has there against Jensen, the Corki versus the Syndra, we know both these champions are capable of so much damage, and not just a lot of damage and a lot of burst, but it comes from range too. They've both got the ability to control entire areas based on the threat they possess. And if either one of them can get a significant edge over the other, they could really dictate the way that these mid-game fights flow.
Yeah, and that's why when I was talking about you don't really have too much of a dive for either team. It's kind of, try to get a pick, try to like section somebody off, catch them in rotation or siege. That's kind of the big thing is you just have so much long-range damage that whoever gets a large advantage early would probably be able to close out. Goes without saying for most team compositions, but as we get in the game, definitely keep your eyes on that mid lane here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have made it onto Summoner's Rift. Everybody's skittering or floating or flying or walking or marching.
Keep going.
Whatever they want to do. We got a lot of verbs in the arsenal today, Zyrene. They're getting out of the base. That's the bottom line. And they're taking their standard line of scrimmage stances.
Ooh,
everybody
Hakuho.
blocking the entrances.
Yeah, Hakuho with the coin start on Thresh. Oh, this is like the good news for me as a person who gets auto-filled on support. You don't have the last hit with the
Yeah, you don't
shield.
have to do the Relic Shield last hit thing anymore. That's always the worst thing for Threshes.
Yeah, you get that extra point, but this is more for engage power when he does have, because I'm talking about how these teams are, kind of, you're like, okay, how do we start this fight? Shen go in, who goes in? This gives you the engage power by pressing the active on the Talisman of Ascension and going faster and having that engage. So that's what he's looking for in the mid game.
And those kinds of items are a lot of fun to see, honestly. Things like the Talisman of
Righteous
Ascension,
Glory.
things like the Righteous Glory, things that can get you into the fight and enable those initiations that otherwise wouldn't be possible, can really enable a playmaker like Thresh already. I mean, the champion's got everything in his kit to make things happen. You've got death sentences, you've got flays, you can drop the box. And if you can put yourself right in the middle of multiple enemy players and set yourself up for those successes, as long as you've got the mechanical skill to deliver, you can make amazing things happen.
Yeah, I love the fact that you have Righteous Glory and like Talisman of Ascension being purchased to just go ahead and try to force these fights. And like I said, it's going to fit the composition as well.
Update number 2 on the issues that we're apparently having. Seems Impact is having some kind of an issue with his mouse, so we're working on addressing what's going on with that and fixing it so he can get back into game and play that Renekton the way that his team wants him to play the Renekton, which is hopefully turn into a big old lizard and take over the game like you were talking about from the top lane. When Renekton gets ahead, too, it is just incredibly difficult to deal with him. Any fight he decides to enter into with a teleport is one where you pretty much just have to run from him because he's so incredibly threatening. And if he doesn't decide to enter into the fight, he's up topside in a 1v1 that his opponent wants nothing to do with.
Yeah, Shen, though, is a decent answer where you can do enough in terms of pulling your sword through and getting the extra % HP damage and trading. You can try to match him early. And when he split pushes, you can kind of play safe. You can W his W and make sure you don't get stunned or take the bulk of the damage. And you'll have more globals than him. So Seraph is going for a little more team-oriented, but it is a lane that if LirA pays attention to and can upset, it can go Seraph's way as well, especially with an early purchase of a Titanic Hydra or the likes.
And honestly, we haven't talked about the jungling a whole lot just yet, but remember LirA, this guy was the all in a LCS, like Team 1 jungler in Spring Split. The guy was the reason that a lot of people were saying when Envy got wins, it was all from LirA all the time. Like, this guy was the heartbeat of Envy in Spring Split. And the problem for him was, and I think one reason why Spring looks so rough for Team Envy, they didn't have him for the first part. He wasn't there for the first couple of weeks, and now in summer, when the team's looking a lot better, they've had all this time to play with LirA. They've had all this time to build that synergy. And if you're looking at this team and looking for somebody to get these guys rolling and put them in a spot where they can contend with a team like Cloud9 that is historically one of the better teams, one of the best teams in North America, LirA's the one guy who has to step up and get them on that board.
Yeah, and LirA, we kind of knew him for playing things like the Lee Sin and being aggressive. The Gragas is another champion that has some playmaking potential, but it's not one that takes over the game like his Nidalee that he's played multiple times as well. So seeing the meta kind of shift towards tankier things mean he has to really rely on his carries. Apollo has been good, but Nisqy is the one that you are looking for a little bit more performance from, especially against Jensen. And we're hearing as well that Nisqy is getting a mouse replacement, so they are just figuring out who has more mouse issues right now, just back and forth.
Take care of all of them at once. As long as we're getting rid of all of them now, so this is the last pause. That's the goal now.
And I wonder just like how many mouse issues actually happen on stage. I think we've had this conversation before.
Can't
where
be
it's
more
like,
than 10 of them because there's only 10 mouses.
Mouses.
Is it mice or mouses if you're talking about the computer ones?
It's probably mice.
I don't know.
Mice.
It's mice. Thank you, crowd.
Yeah, let's get the crowd vote going for this. All in favor of mice? Mouses?
See, this is
dead silent. I love it. I love
dead
it.
silent. Okay, I goofed on that one. Crowd had my back though. They corrected me. We're golden now.
We tried to go for like the deep conversation and just like the Velociraptor.
No, it's just ended up
it's
all the way
mice.
into that. While we hold for the delays though, let's hear from Apollo and his team and about how they're improving on their map play.
This split, we've really, all the players stepped up to kind of self-improve and help each other get better as a team. And especially LirA, I think he helped us improve our macro, tenfold, because he just knew like the most about the game, and he was able to kind of teach us and show us what to do outside of just this, this lane phase. And that's kind of what helped us in like the first couple of weeks. That's why we improved so much, is because we knew what to do outside of that, 15, 20 minute mark. We actually knew how to do that macro and late game.
I mean, you think about this team and what's gone on with them, where they've had the most early game leads out of any team back in spring.
Crazy.
LirA, like we talked about Acadia being first blood king, but LirA actually had the highest first blood percentage out of anybody in the league. So he actually won that battle there, got his team incredible early leads, but they didn't really do much with them. And so having them learn a little bit more and pass their record already, because they were 3-15 last split, they're now 5-5. They've already gone past that. They're in a much better spot already in the split.
And I like the fact that he specifically mentioned that 15 to 20 minute mark aspect of the game, because it felt like a lot of Envy games looked good up until then. As soon as the clock
they were
strikes
number
20,
one in gold leads at 15 and 20. They had the most, they had the largest. It was very frustrating to watch a lot of Envy games. You're like, what are they doing?
Yeah, as soon as it strikes 20 minutes, Baron spawns, everybody starts thinking about mid-game plays, and sure enough, within the next 2 or 3 minutes, some sort of disaster would strike, whether it was a Baron throw or a very poor rotation where they lost 3 turrets for 1 or something along those lines. Envy would always get themselves outplayed, and shoring up that macro play, getting that mid-game to the point where it needs to be, is exactly what this team has to do if they want to stay a mid-level team, because right now, they're looking at potentially a playoff spot.
Yeah, they're currently in position for a playoff spot right now, in 5th/6th, tied for it, but with Dignitas picking up a win, I believe, then makes it a little bit harder for them. They have to kind of keep up.
And it's interesting with the way the standings are in ALCS right now. We've still got, obviously, 3.5 more weeks to play, so it's not over yet by any means.
That's over. Just phone it in.
Yeah, just go ahead and phone it in right now. Okay, everybody's going in the positions they're at. But because everything is so close between those couple of playoff spots, like 5th, 6th, 7th, but then also at the bottom, like the teams going around down there have very close records. It's not just your own wins and losses that matter. The guys in the same spot as you, like you said, if you're tied for 5th, 6th, and the person you're tied with gets a win, all of a sudden, you're not winning to make sure that you go up one and get an advantage. You're winning to stay alive.
Yeah. Basically, it's increments of just single games, where Cloud9's in 4th. They're one match up over Dignitas and Envy. Then below them in 7th place is Echo Fox, which is one match behind that position. And then below that, you have FlyQuest, and you also have Phoenix One, which is one match behind that. So the positions can change in a weekend. If a team goes 2-0 and the other one goes 0-2, you could see them swapping very quickly. Echo Fox would be 6 match wins, and if Cloud9 go 0-2, they would be at 6 match wins, and you'd have a complete reversal. So the standings are still incredibly close.
Yeah, and with that level of, what's the word I'm looking for? Volatility. Volatility in the standings. It's always fun to see one of those crazy weeks happen. Like, last week, well, not last week. Last week was Rift Rivals, but week 5, FlyQuest going 2-0. That's something a lot of people weren't expecting when FlyQuest was a team that was having a rough streak.
Yeah, FlyQuest was at 1-7 in match record, and then they went 2-0. Phoenix One were exactly the same. They were 1-7 coming into week 5, and they went 2-0. So those teams at the very bottom ended up going up, but none of them are in this game.
All right, Summoner's Rift loaded onto.
All the mouses taken care of.
Yeah, the mice are taken care of. Everything is in its proper place. We're good to go. Hanging out in the river. Hakuho just flailing those weapons around, the chain and lantern, whatever he has. The hook, yeah. The hook and lantern both attached together through a chain. Yeah, that's what that thing was. All right, Cloud9 got the bottom lane hanging out around the red buff. Contractz starting up at Raptor Camp. Looks like they're going to go ahead and give him sort of a super leash here, as we sometimes see those junglers get these days to give them that exceptionally fast start and potentially get them in the lanes really early.
Yeah, and I think Braum is the best super leasher on blue side, where you can just hit the red buff for them and just stun it up, and you'll see Contractz take almost no damage, and he'll be level 2.5 with one more camp to do at 2 minutes. And we'll see where Contractz goes from here. Goes to the other side. If he does his blue immediately, he will get spotted by the ward that was placed on that top side, though. Okay, he's going to blast cone over. This looks like he might go for a level 3 gank top, but it is going to get spotted out here by this ward, so it's well placed.
Contractz clearing out this blue buff, but like you said, a well-placed ward, keeping a vision on your opponent when you think they might be going for that strategy, it nullifies the advantage. The entire point of the super leash is to make it so you can have that slightly early gank, but if your opponents have eyes on it, it's all for nothing.
Yeah, and Seraph can't really match. It's level 2, though. And yeah, they're going for the top side of the map here.
Jensen stunned up there by Nisqy as Contractz still working his way up here, seeing what he can find. Just counter jungling now.
Yeah, LirA does have to be careful, though, because of the fact that there is an Elise in his jungle. He's kind of aware of it, though, based on what he can imply. So, yeah, puts the Q in the bush. We'll see what happens here. Maybe it's a turret dive top, but Seraph not low at all, and LirA on this side of the map.
Shen's not exactly the easiest champ to dive either when you have a taunt as well as a dodge zone with the Spirit's Refuge.
Yeah, but they're going to try it, though. Here comes LirA as well, backing them up. They will see LirA here now. Nice flash!
Very well done from Seraph. That's immediately going to cancel this one out, you would hope. Impact slicing and dicing his way to safety as Contractz now going to be caught out a little bit there by LirA.
Seraph, almost 3. If he can get 3 off of minions, then he gets taunt.
LirA shows up in time to scare these guys away, though. Impact and Contractz still trying to make something happen here, but Contractz the one who loses more health than anyone.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about, where it's a volatile 2-on-2 top lane, and you really want to have that pressure as Elise Renekton, but a great flash from Seraph, and he didn't have the taunt yet, and that's why it was of the essence that Contractz went at the time that he did, because those minions under the turret would have given level 3 to Seraph, and he would have been able to turn that play around with a Shadow Dash.
Well, bottom side, a little action between these guys. Smoothie steps up, holds up the shield, and stops any further aggro from the Envy bottom lane. Hakuho still wants to just play as forward as he can, though, threaten the potential of that hook onto Sneaky. Because if you get caught out by that, Apollo's there. He's able to throw down multiple feathers pretty quickly as long as he's got both the Q available and he's got the auto attacks enchanted. Thresh CC chain into a root from Xayah. Very deadly combination.
Yeah, exactly. Look at this top lane, Seraph winning out on that trade. Behind in CS, but Impact gonna be able to heal up off of his Q.
27 farm for the Renekton, 19 for the Shen. Kind of expect Shen to
but I feel like
the back foot here a little
Seraph, if he gets a taunt pass through, he actually has slight kill pressure here.
He's gonna go for it though.
Yeah, Impact's looking for another Q to try and heal him up a bit. But yeah, he's gotta wait. It'll push back towards him, so Impact will just be a little patient.
LirA invading the enemy jungle a little bit late. Sometimes you see.
Well, he'll see this here. This is the ward from Hakuho earlier.
This could be a nice ward to find him some sort of aggression onto that enemy jungler. Now getting
bottom
himself
lane.
back.
He's in trouble, actually.
Both bottom laners coming down. Very nice lantern, getting him away to safety. The flash from Contractz burned for nothing.
Exactly. The Contractz flash is big there because the flash cocoon is something that could really help you out in mid lane and get the cleanse. Make sure that the exhaust from Jensen is big, but. See, on the top side, Impact's actually going to use his summoner spell, the teleport, to get back after, kind of taking a lot more damage than you normally would on this Renekton. So he's going to shove this wave. Seraph will TP back as well so he doesn't miss anything, and will return with some defensive items.
Impact doesn't return with the best buy out there, only getting himself a Ruby Crystal and a Longsword. As more damage finds its way into Smoothie bottom side. Jensen in lane in summer. Look at those numbers. First, second, and third across the stats we see.
I like how it's Jensen in lane. It's like Sneaky in lane, lol, but Jensen in lane, PogChamp. He's actually insane in terms of how good he is in the laning phase.
Now he'll just keep on farming up, becoming that threat that you want your Corki to be in the mid game. And Corki spikes so hard in mid game too.
Yes.
You get one of those fights, especially ones where you have a package, you've got the Trinity Force spike. Corki can win a fight on his own. Contractz, again in enemy territory though. Both junglers playing so forward into the enemy jungle this time around. Really looking for opportunities to scout each other out, read each other, and find any sort of advantage they can through that counter.
Oh, nice dodge from Nisqy there. Saves himself having to use a summoner spell.
Which every summoner spell can go a long way in a matchup like this. Having cleanse down, having flash down, that could mean you just become a massive target for a revisit from Contractz.
Yeah. Also, there's a hook.
Nice one on the Sneaky there, but Apollo's got to be careful. Doesn't want to walk up any further. Allow any more charges to be put into that explosive shot. Gets himself back.
Yeah, I was also looking that Nisqy didn't go for Thunderlord, so his kill pressure is a little bit lower in terms of instant burst, but has a Storm Raider Surge, so when he ulties, he'll be able to chase people down and get extra Qs on them and try to finish them off. So it's an interesting choice there. We're seeing Storm Raider Surge from mid laners constantly now because of the mobility after burst, and he just had it there with the QE onto Contractz, and it helped him dodge.
Now, even though we've got no kills yet or anything like that, you're seeing a slight gold lead at the top of your screen favoring the side of Cloud9, showing that the farm game is going their way right now. And a big part of that is what you're seeing topside between Impact and Seraph.
Oh yeah, the fact that that flash was blown very early on. Hakuho, though, fished for a hook, didn't get it, gonna take damage instead.
Yep. Sneaky makes sure he gets as much of a punish as he can out of that one. Explosive charge
LirA
plus
stole.
3 auto attacks has a pretty nice amount of damage behind it.
Yeah, LirA stole the red buff there. You can see these wards on the bottom side of the map are just helping him out. And he's counter juggling. He's about to hit 6 off of this and really just punishing Contractz very heavily. You're seeing the guy who was #1 in NA LCS Pro versus the Rookie of the Spring split.
Ooh, that hook just a little bit short to find its way one to Sneaky. Apollo low on health, low on mana.
He's dancing with death there. Really, if he got hit by a Q there from Smoothie, would have had to back off, potentially blow a summoner spell or get a lantern. LirA, oh, he's gonna try to punish this. He swept, knows there's nothing there. Gets the cast.
Very nice ulti there on Sneaky, and he's gonna look to interrupt the jump away as well. Sneaky still trying to escape, but is he long for this world? No! A first blood goes the way of Hakuho, and LirA shows up when they need him.
That was the okie doke as well. They went all the way around. Envy's bottom lane made sure that they could get in there by going around and having the blast cone take them over. And then they end up getting that kill. Goes to Hakuho though, but LirA set up that bottom lane beautifully. Let's see that again here. You can see they go to the blast cone, then they go over, so he doesn't have to use lantern here. Sneaky got, he flashed right into that. Sneaky W'd and then flashed, but the body slam was buffered over that area, and he just basically gets a fat man belly in the face.
Well played by LirA, unlucky for Sneaky.
Yeah.
And that's going to get Envy their first blood. That's going to put them up to a gold lead. And getting that money, even though they got the money onto the support, still getting it in there, making sure that you've got the assists as well coming in for the jungler and the AD carry.
I mean, the difference becomes mobility boots at that point. Now Hakuho has an opportunity where he has a very distinct mobility advantage over Smoothie, that he can roam and make plays on some lanes, get a summoner spell or two, and that would definitely benefit. But you can see Smoothie moving towards the top as they've rotated their lanes to try and just play through a winning lane.
Yep, Cloud9, they recognize how far ahead their top laner is, recognize that maybe bot lane isn't where they want to be hanging out, and with Sneaky's turret pushing power on the Tristana, why not utilize that to the fullest, grab the turret first blood, and bring this game back to even.
I was watching an interview that was done very recently in Europe about how the Rift Rivals went and why it went the way that it did. It was just that the North American teams had this early game aggression that they hadn't experienced before. And it made all the difference there. That's one of those plays where we're losing bottom lane. We just blew 3 summoner spells and died. Let's go top off of a winning lane, shove through with the turret pusher. You get momentum on that play. Envy would have to sniff that play out and take the gamble of going top themselves in a losing non-shoving lane. So basically, if you think about it the other way, if they had sent Xayah and Thresh top, then Shen isn't shoving that wave. Shen's under his turret, so it takes you like 20 extra seconds to push that wave all the way to the enemy turret. You lose momentum on the bottom side, and so it actually ends up being a big play here. But hold on, they'll try to get Sneaky with this hook.
Ooh. Nope.
They still get the turret, though.
Right, they even up the turret count. That's more valuable than the kill onto Sneaky anyway. It does bring Envy back up to an over 1,000 gold.
Yeah, this also gets Apollo solo experience and a CS advantage. He's up 20 already over Sneaky, and he's pushing. And LirA's on this bottom side here. He knows there's no flash.
LirA wants to make a repeat. Got flash of his own. Speaking of flashing, over the wall go Impact and Contractz both. Seraph flashing back on his
Didn't
own.
repel fast enough.
Time to avoid the repel. Doesn't want to walk back towards that one.
He's just running towards Jensen now, so he's dead either way.
2 flashes find themselves a kill for Cloud9. Their first one of the game, getting that onto Impact means that lead is only going to be built even greater than it was before.
Yeah, junglers playing to their winning matchups, and look at how the map is split here, where C9 have absolute control of that top side with that turret down. It's just littered with wards, whereas Envy have control of the bottom side there. 2 flashes burned to go after Seraph here, who then burns his own to get over the wall. But then that path back doesn't really matter too much, to be honest, because I feel like Contractz would have headed him off to the right, and Jensen would have come up from the bottom. So I think he was kind of dead to rights at that point.
And when you take a look at these junglers, you can see LirA going for a very tanky approach this game. A lot of times you would see Gragas' build Runic Echoes, but with the buffs to Cinderhulk and the way things have changed in terms of the meta game, Gragas happy to go tank right now, be that front line for his team.
Well, you also think about how the mana regen on the base item got buffed to 225%, I believe, when you're in your own jungle. So that's big because I think it was 175 or a little bit lower than that previously. And Runic Echoes had its mana on its hitting a camp reduced. So the difference between the mana regen of Runic Echoes versus the Cinderhulk item is actually less as well. And that was the big issue with Gragas, was he kind of just used a whole bunch of mana over and over again. Now he doesn't have as many issues now in the jungle, and the Cinderhulk will help him clear, which hasn't really been too much of an issue for him in general. But the fact that he'll be tankier, it's always kind of been that, Gragas, you need to get to Runic Echoes, then you could start buying some tank items and be a frontliner for your team. Otherwise, if you have Runic Echoes, you're still just this squishy Gragas trying to run around. Right now, it looks like Envy making a play on the bottom side, and Contractz from C9 is here to answer. But they saw him.
Reaction breaking out. Contractz going in on LirA here, who's going to be knocked up. TP comes in, stun onto LirA. TP coming in from behind. Impact over the wall. It's 4 versus 4 as Jensen comes down to join the fight as well. Seraph taunting up the enemy top laner as the hook comes in and Impact drops. Envy finds themselves one.
That was really well played from Envy there. Seraph held onto his taunt, and it was the threat of the taunt. You saw C9 didn't really want to have Nisqy approach. They started backing up after the Stand United completed, and then they all went on to Impact, who was in the back line. Normally you see your team kind of get scared when they teleport right on top of them, and they back up. They said, no, hold your ground, and then they all collapsed on him as C9 had too much distance between themselves and Impact's TP point by that point of the fight.
Rather slow Earth Drake attempt afterwards is not interrupted. Envy takes that. Let's take another look at the fight, though.
Yeah. A lot of damage thrown onto LirA here, multiple ultimates, but they can't kill him fast enough. Seraph comes through, and then you see Contractz is backing up. Nisqy backs up a little bit there, and then great ultimate there from LirA to stop Smoothie and Nisqy from dealing damage while they take out Impact. A lot of team fighting is making sure that you have a damage advantage during that fight. Separating it is one of the best ways that you can do that, too.
Still 1,000 gold up for Envy now. Also with that Mountain Drake, and a second one spawning next means to keep your eyes on who ends up getting these early Drakes, because building that Mountain advantage, having a couple of them under your belt, even 3 if there happens to be a third one spawn after this next one, could really be huge for opening up opportunities and options later on in the game.
Yeah, and right now I actually feel like Envy have a decent advantage across the map. The top lane is the one that's kind of taking the deficit for them, but a very distinct advantage in the jungle right now in terms of items, with a lot more HP and defensive stats for LirA built over Contractz. Mid lane, though, the Hex Drinker was kind of this transition item to make sure that Jensen survives lane, but it delays his Trinity Force power spike, whereas Nisqy now has boots, and he has Morellonomicon, and he's ready to get that fight going.
LC9 deciding they're going to go for more objective play, taking down the tier 1 bottom.
Yeah, it's actually just a swap here where Apollo's going to take the top turret. And I actually see Envy do this a lot, where Apollo's actually kind of like the way that Fnatic play with Reckless in a side lane. He picks up so much solo lane experience. I'm actually interested in how much experience Apollo is up on average at 15 minutes over his lane opponent, because very early on in the game, he gets that side lane push, but because he's the only person there, it's a momentum bonus for Cloud9, and they take 2 turrets for the 1.
Yeah, trading away a tier 1 for a tier 1 is fine. Trading away a tier 1 for a tier 1 and the tier 2 behind it is not the kind of macro plays you need to be making.
Yeah, Rift Herald can get you a turret, sure, but a turret gets you a turret, so you're trying to get something back.
You're just ruling out the middleman and going straight for the turret.
Yeah, and this is not always a guaranteed turret either, but I would say that if Rift Herald can get you that mid turret, then against Cloud9, it's worth it, because Cloud9 love to play around mid. They lose their mid turret very late in the game on average, and then if you're able to crack that one open, Jensen has to play back further than he likes to. I think
shut down his carry potential.
Because we always see outer turrets fall way earlier than the mid turret, right? Mid turret's the hardest one to kind of crack that T1, but if you are against, I think, Cloud9, TSM, and even I would say Echo Fox and Froggen, having the Rift Herald is probably better than having one of your side lane turrets if you can get that mid tier 1 down, because that gives you so much control of the map. And if that's what Envy go for here, it may be a worth trade in the long run. But of course, I'm just saying, you know, obviously don't give up your tier 2 for just a Rift Herald on average.
Right. Plus, there's a lot of speculation involved. How's the Rift Herald actually going to be used? What's the profit going to be? Can they make this work out and keep Jensen away from that safe farming opportunity that he likes to become that hyper carry that Cloud9 needs. He does have Trinity Force now completed along with that Hex Drinker, so safety against the Syndra as well as the Power Spike.
Exactly, and Nisqy now has his Infinity Edge, so they missed the sweeper there. They saw them all go into the bush, by the way. They aren't being clever at all.
But Envy may be able to make a clever collapse here.
Yeah,
They'll send LirA in first to make him look like the bait, but now the rest of Envy has arrived. The hook down onto Smoothie. Fox shows up. Smoothie jumping away
Nisqy
to
from the side here.
Engaging, but Nisqy coming in on the side, dropping the burst onto Contractz. Apollo grabbing the kill as Jensen has to try to make his way out of this one. The Valkyrie over the wall to stay safe. Sneaky jumping away with his own rocket jump. Hakuho still looking to get in range to maybe make another pick, but they won't find it.
Yeah, now Apollo, I think he'll go topside to clear this wave out and shove it into the tier 2. And I think mid lane, you probably put the Rift Herald here to get this turret.
Can they make something happen, though? Looks like
They're
going to use it,
but I don't know. I feel like you should have used it here, but they're going to go for the Wolves instead. Try to get that early on. A Rift Herald here would kill it.
Nope. Looks like they want to save it.
Maybe?
Huh? Taking down the blast cone, putting multiple bodies mid. They may think they can just take this down without it, but nope. Summon now.
Now I feel like everybody's here, and Jensen just back, that you would have taken this without the Rift Herald. So
it's not even going to get to use his head?
Yeah. It actually just used a lot of its HP on that. So
on a headbutt that didn't accomplish a whole lot of anything.
Yeah.
So
But this will take less damage than it would have otherwise, but still, we're nitpicking here. They take the mid turret. That's the important part. And Envy have a gold lead, and they have control of the dragon now, which will... This is a big part, right? You got mid turret right before dragon comes up in a minute, and that's exactly what you want, because you can shove this all the way to the tier 2. Takes longer for them to return shove that wave out, and that could be enough time for you to set up vision in that area.
Right, we've seen vision control be so important around these mid-game Drake fights. I can't tell you how many different games I've seen where a team looks like they're ahead, and it's that second or third Drake fight around the 20-minute mark that ends up being some kind of a throw because they don't properly control the vision or the information or the area. It's so critical to making sure you continue success from early game into mid-game.
Exactly, try to transition a little bit. And speaking of transitioning, we're seeing the Nisqy kind of transition to the LCS stage quite well. It's been back and forth in terms of his performances. He has been somebody who's played like big carries like Cassiopeia and waiting for the late game. But on the Syndra here, he's already had a decent impact in the early game, and he's not far behind Jensen at all in terms of CS. It's pretty much even in my book, just 6 behind, which is a single minion wave depending on pressure. So he's not getting outclassed here in mid lane, but we'll see what happens.
Jensen trying to get in there, decides to Valkyrie forwards, but Nisqy gets himself away. The exhaust from Jensen did come out there, so Summoner Spell going to be down for Cloud9. Should a fight break out around this Drake?
Yeah, exhaust down, but like you said, Drake, I feel like this is Envy's, because Sneaky's top lane trying to answer what Apollo was doing and getting experience advantage, because if you let that happen over and over again, you end up just down 2 levels as an AD carry. Feels bad, man, and then you're part of the 1-3-1 or the 4-1, and then your mid laner's getting the CS and all of the experience. You're splitting with 4 people, so it's a bad time, but like I said, Envy will get this, and now they're threatening Tristana on the top side.
You called it, Zyrene. Second Mountain Drake goes over to Envy. That means they're going to have that much more objective control as the game goes on. Third one, however, will not be a Mountain. That'll just be Cloud spawning here in about 6 minutes, but Impact has been having a good impact this game as well. We were kind of concerned for this guy. We were talking about how his performances this split haven't been as convincing or as strong as they usually are, as good as Cloud9 would want them to be, but so far this game, he's got a 30 CS advantage over his opponent. He's got the 1 kill that his team has. He's been doing well.
Yeah, and laning is only a small part of a top laner's job. We've seen Impact have like 50 CS advantages in the top lane recently, and then they lose the game. Then they sub in Ray, and then he has like a CS deficit, and then they win the game. So depending on how he teleports in and how he plays this, it could be very different, because what happened on this bottom side of the map is they lost their tier 2 as Envy, and I talked about how, that's not good on paper, but the fact that they got to even turrets, take the mid tier 1, I think that's more important, because now you have a losing Shen against a Renekton in a very long lane, which gives you time, less pressure on your team. It's one of those things that's kind of harder to understand, but when you lose your tier 2 in a side lane, it means that there isn't pressure on a tier 2 turret, and you don't have to answer it as often, right? The Shen can stay there, pull the Renekton all the way down, and before the Renekton has threat on your base again, it takes much longer, and you can go do Baron or contest the Baron during that time.
Or have a fight in the top side of the river.
Exactly. Because now the Shen gets to push all the way to this tier 2, threaten that, pulls Renekton to the bottom side, and now Seraph will get to leave this lane, do whatever he wants for, I would say, maybe 20 to 30 seconds. Then he has to come back down to bottom because that's how long it'll take to kind of get that minion wave all the way back to where, I would actually say maybe even 40 seconds to get it all the way back to his side of the map.
And that kind of control, that kind of ability to read the situation in the mid game and play around it, that's what we wanted to see from Envy. That's what we were talking about earlier with the team and what we kind of heard from when they were talking about their ability to play better now, 15, 20 minutes into the game, know what they're supposed to be doing.
And instead, what happened was Seraph didn't go for a back there. He goes for a deep ward on the red buff instead of waiting for the split push and having a back timer or something along those lines. He didn't have much gold, only about 800, so it makes sense. But now he's going to have to wait for the Renekton. Now Impact will have priority. This is basically what priority is you have the lane on the other person's side, and they have to clear it out, and it takes their time. So now I believe Impact can maybe even go for a blue buff here, depending.
LirA's behind enemy lines, trying to set up something sneaky, but...
Do you want it? How much time will this take? It's always, you're spending time on things as a pro player. How many seconds will this take? How many seconds will that take?
Time's a resource.
And you buy it all the time, right? If I shove this wave out, it's going to take 10 seconds now, but it will cost the other guy 15 seconds. And if I can, use that time window, is that going to be good for me?
More waves being shoved. Both teams just playing this one really slow, really cautiously, honestly. 4 kills in 23 minutes.
Yeah.
Not the most explosive game, but now it's going to be Smoothie who gets jumped on, trying to face check the brush there, ends up getting himself caught out, and Envy will find the pick.
He just got obliterated there, and now they can maybe go for another bait, another hook, fishing for it. Oh.
No, trying to repel. Nice flash over the wall, though. Contractz keeps himself alive.
They chunked him out, though, and got his flash, so that might be enough for Envy to say it's Baron time, but they have complete control of this area with their control wards. When we're talking about that 20-minute shot calling, it seems like something that's kind of fallen to their lap off of that pick on Smoothie, but it was something they generated. And look at that, Seraph's even going to use the stand united early, and they caught Jensen.
Hook into the box. Jensen going to be forced to run away from this one. Flash used to keep himself safe as Envy stays on the Baron. It's below 3,000, and Envy will secure this major objective for themselves. Last split, that would have been a potential throw, but this split, Envy knows what they're doing, and they execute.
Calculated, methodical, double mountain helps them out as well in that regard, but that's something that they bought with their early advantage, was that mountain break.
Cloud9 will respond by taking down the enemy tier 1, though. Just grabbing a little bit of extra standing gold on the map, trying to keep things as equalized as possible to contend with this Baron.
Yeah, so now if you're Envy, Apollo pushes out bottom, Seraph pushes out top, still has teleport advantage over Impact, so you could split the map. Push bottom and mid in, and put more people on the middle part of the map because the turret is a little bit lower. And they're going, handing off the blue buff. Nisqy shoved it out. Actually, it looks like they're going to try to catch Apollo here in the side lane, but they might be ready for this. Thresh is here.
Killing off a Xayah is difficult.
Look at that
Killing
respect.
off a Xayah with Thresh is a lot harder.
Look at that respect from Apollo where he's like, they could be in here. And there they
Contractz getting
go.
himself hooked. Apollo may be in some trouble. Going to be turned to safety, but he's bursted before he can even get himself out. He died with flash up, but now the counterattack from Envy. Contractz repels himself up into the air. Going to be landing in a moment. The stun is not timed correctly, but the damage still comes through. Smoothie at half HP. Jensen makes his way towards this one.
That was also the ultimate there from Nisqy. So I feel like C9 are in a good spot here.
They've got their 4 remaining members down here, but they don't really have any way to find a path onto their opponents.
Yeah, but Seraph will push the top lane out, and then you'll have LirA push mid. Cloud Drake in 20 seconds, and C9 will probably get that. But yeah, Impact has to run mid, clear this wave, has to go top, clear that wave. And people haven't started backing until just now on Envy's side.
Impact trying to address as much of this as he can. The Baroned up minions make everything so very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, so basically you make that play, but you lose some farm in the mid lane, it dies the turret, you lose a little bit of farm on the top side too. So you're always kind of giving up small things to try and make that play.
Envy now moving on to their 3rd elemental break of the game.
I hate this. I hate this.
Hate
from
this?
Seraph. All right, so the way that Adaptive Helm works is it's taking magic damage from a spell or effect, reduces all subsequent magic damage taken from that spell or effect. So against Corki, I guess it might work on the passive because it's technically an effect / spell, but other than that, there's really nothing that he's going to get repeatedly hit by, and we'll see.
Well, Sneaky's jumping in on him. Jensen there to help. Seraph forced to flash over the wall to keep himself safe. push continues from Envy, utilizing the Baron, taking down the tier 2 in bottom lane. 4,000 gold up over their opponents on Cloud9.
Yeah, and they've been playing quite well. And there it is, Talisman of Ascension plus Ruby Sightstone for Hakuho will mean he gets to just pop that thing every few seconds, every 48 seconds to be exact on the Talisman of Ascension, so he can constantly make plays. And Hakuho has been a big playmaker for this team. Him and LirA have been a very deadly jungle support combo.
Yeah, 1-0 and 3, 2-0 and 2, both with 4 out of 5 kill participation and no deaths. They're doing a lot of work for this team, being that supportive utility type of front line that they need to make those plays happen. But now with Baron buff just hitting that expiry tick, Envy's going to have to find a way to make more plays without that help.
Yeah, it wasn't an enormous power play either. They really got one turret back, and they lost their mid turret for that as well. So they got the bottom tier 2 for their mid tier 1. So it kind of went even in that trade. They just got to get control of the map, but it was quickly grabbed back by Cloud9 as you just check the warding right now. Control wards in their own jungle so they can advance those ward lines, but no more control wards in the inventory for Cloud9 really. Just Smoothie, who's packing 3. Everybody else though on Envy, ready to reset their vision. Sneaky topside, I don't think they're fast enough to collapse and they'd get spotted here.
And remember, Sneaky's still farming up. Yeah. Tristana can be, even if her team's behind, it doesn't matter. If Tristana hits late game full build, that's a threat.
Oh, look, exactly what I was talking about. That was a really loud meow. Is Apollo is now 2 levels up over Sneaky, right? And this is because of the fact that he's doing the side lane split push that I see him do a whole bunch. Now, Sneaky, of course, is almost about to hit level 14, so it's kind of disingenuous to say 2 levels. I would say maybe 1.5 at this point. But the fact that Apollo just keeps getting solo experience on a side lane makes it so that when team fights happen, you have a stronger secondary threat aside from your mid laner than Cloud9 does.
And I like how not only the Corki, but the Tristana as well, Jensen and Sneaky both building those hex drinkers because they know Nisqy's going to be gunning for them with that ultimate. Speaking of ultimates, Hakuho dropping the box there mid lane, but they only they do get Sneaky's flash, but they aren't able to find the pick itself.
It's interesting as well that he went for the hex drinker to make sure he's like, I'm gonna eat magic damage from Nisqy's ulti no matter what, so he doesn't go for QSS to try and get rid of something like a hook. He wants just the survivability of the hex drinker instead.
Envy take out their 5th turret of the game, stealing that one away from Cloud9, beating it down. There's only one Cloud9 turret left standing outside of the base. That is that tier 2 in top lane.
Oh, catch on impact. He might be done for.
Gets himself hooked up, takes burst, gets dropped pretty rapidly, tries to flash out, but LirA has the cast right where it needs to be. Impact still trying to get himself out of this one. The play comes in. Impact with slices and dices.
LirA body slam flash now.
Yup, no matter what you do, no matter how many chances you got, you still lose your top laner, but losing mid for it is not a good trade. Cloud9 pushing into the base of Envy, out-rotating them, punishing them for investing too hard into Impact as Nisqy goes into the back line. Now the repel used to dodge away from at least a little bit of the ultimate damage. Nisqy with no ult, Cloud9 disengaging, but Apollo is bottom, pushing into that inhibitor as well. And Nisqy trying to get away. LirA coming back. The taunt from Seraph. 3 dead on the side of Cloud9. A double kill from Seraph. As Jensen and Sneaky now have no one left to protect them. They've got to back themselves away. Apollo taking down the bottom lane inhibitor, and Envy have found a phenomenal turn of events.
Exactly. This is huge for Envy. He can stay right there. You're seeing Hakuho chase them. They're going to get this turret. There's 9 seconds on impact. He'll most likely back after this.
One Nexus turret down. It looked originally good for Envy. Then it looked good for Cloud9, saying, oh, you got Renekton. Well, we got your inhibitor turret. And then it looks even better for Envy. Absolutely crazy way for things to play out there.
Yeah, the fact that Cloud9 are kind of operating without a tank besides Smoothie in that fight means that you have to kind of play different terms of frontline, backline, and they went for that inhibitor a little bit, and then they got flanked from all sides. Even though it's a numbers disadvantage here, time is of the essence. You have to be able to kill Nisqy if you're going to do it, and then on the backside, LirA's already coming into this fight, and now you're completely surrounded, and you have to bail, even though you have a range advantage here with your AD carry. And I love that Apollo stayed. He had originally had his back channeling, and then said, okay, they are backing off. Cloud9 are actually afraid of this next play, and then he was able to get so much from it. 2 turrets and the inhibitor. Big win there for Envy.
Cloud9 has been slowly falling more and more behind throughout this game, and now we're getting to the point where they have legitimate concerns of not being able to come back without a big throw from Envy because they're 7,000 gold down.
Yeah, and the Baron is live right now. We have level advantages pretty much across the board for Envy. Man, Jensen, 0-0-0 right now. I think this was said pretty recently where it's like, I can't remember the last time Jensen had a 0-0-0 game, right? This guy in losses doesn't really die, but he doesn't get to make a whole lot of plays or have much action because his team is kind of floundering around him right now. That top lane that was supposed to be this duo of Elise and Renekton just got shut down, and then the bottom lane kind of got out-farmed, and Apollo was getting the side lane farm, and Sneaky's going to go for broke here, saying, all right, you trade the Baron for this, but how will he make it out of this? That's the question. Is he gonna try to shove? The minion wave sees him?
Nope.
Yeah.
Not willing to invest all in on that one.
That's how you cut mid-priority, is you just send somebody around through Fog of War, make sure that he can cut the minions, and now Envy will shove this wave up, but they only have casters and 1 melee in this one, so it'll be back to even in terms of the mid lane pressure. But Impact has to answer bottom. There's super minions coming down that lane.
As that super minion pressure builds, that's
Sneaky again.
one more tool available for Envy to make something happen here. Jensen getting himself away.
He has flash, so he's kind of dancing with death right now.
Wants to annoy Envy as much as he can. Keep them around here as long as humanly possible.
Yeah, and does this frustrate Envy? Does this make them go to the point where they say, all right, we should just do Baron, because Sneaky's now going to go for the inhib again?
Sneaky being sneaky.
I mean, he'll get this very quickly, and it looks like he says, I don't give a damn about the Baron. We're just going to get this inhib.
Yeah, Cloud9's going for the trade.
Yeah, and then there's an inhibitor down mid. It's much harder to push it as the team that has Baron. Takes you a little bit longer, but you can go for the other side lanes, and Sneaky's going to keep pushing mid.
Sneaky still middle, needs to get back to the base relatively soon, because Envy is pushing down the top side. They get that one remaining tier 2 we mentioned earlier. Now they've got to push themselves further into the Cloud9 base. Remember, the bottom lane has already been ruptured, and now top side's going to be the same. Smoothie stunned up as the tier 3 goes down. Envy manages to break apart 2 separate lanes of the Cloud9 base. Impact thinking about going into this fight, popping the ulti, but he's dragged in with the hook and bursted down. The damage from Apollo will seal his fate. The Feather Storm comes out, the feathers fly, the double kill for Apollo, and Cloud9 is 3 versus 5.
And this might be game.
Envy bearing down on the Nexus. They've got minions coming in from the bottom lane. There's only 1 Nexus turret still standing. Envy with a full 5-man roster on the Cloud9 Nexus turret. Brings it down to 1% HP or somewhere about there. Sneaky taking some damage from those Syndra spells. Envy still trying to end this one here. Contractz gets caught out. And that should be it. Jensen and Sneaky again, the only 2 standing. And exhausted Tristana cannot deal with 5 Envy members. And Envy will go up 1-0.
Jensen ends the game 0-0-0 on Corki. Envy shut him down and made it so he wasn't a factor in this game at all. And we talked about how well he's been performing in the lane phase. They didn't touch it. If they went top.
If you can take the secret weapon of the enemy team and just render it completely useless, what are they going to do?
Don't know how much of a secret weapon it is.
The secret weapon that everybody knows about, if you can shut that down, what are you going to do? Cloud9 wins games off of Jensen. So let's not let Jensen do anything, and we win the game.
Yeah, and a bit of that is that Corki pick as well, because Corki needs other people to kind of do things for him unless he has the package. So there's kind of like a 5-minute timer on when he can actually make a play. But I definitely think that this game fell a lot on Nisqy in the mid lane, but LirA in the jungle.
Oh, yeah.
LirA going top, making it so that they didn't have a very good early play onto Seraph, and then constantly kept going to the top side of the map. When I looked at how many deaths there were in this game, for the side of Cloud9, they had 11 deaths, and that was 4 from Contractz, 3 from Impact. So they really got shut down. 7 of those 11 kills were that top lane jungle duo, which they had drafted to have a dominant early tower diving presence.
And even when LirA wasn't in the top side, when we saw him visit bottom early and make that awesome flash body slam after the cask that he got onto Sneaky, he made plays happen all over the place. We're going to throw things over to Dash and Mark now, though, to see what they make of the Envy win.
Thank you very much, Captain Flowers. Envy picking up the win over C9 here. And before we even dive into the game as a whole, I kind of want to acknowledge the fact that while Envy's only 1 game behind C9 in the standings, it feels like coming into this matchup, the expectation is that C9 would crush Envy. So let's like kind of establish a bearing in terms of like where we think these teams' power levels are coming in so that we can assess how they played.
It's really weird just because we've been talking about the top half of the league so much this split where it's like, oh, you know, CLG and Immortals are up there now, and of course TSM's still there, and you have C9, of course. You can never not have them in the finals.
And Dignitas is looking better again all of a sudden. And then here you have Envy sitting at 5-5, who, again, they've already accumulated more wins than they had last split and are sitting at this 500 mark, looking to tie themselves up, essentially, with C9 in the standings if they're able to come away with the full match victory today. So we sit in this weird position where I don't feel like they're as strong a team, even though, from a record standpoint, they're almost matched.
Yeah, I think part of that comes down to some of the swaps that they've had. They started out with Pyrion, it looked good, and then they brought Nisqy in, they struggled a little bit. There's always been a bit of a question mark with Seraph, and it felt like this team didn't have a super strong identity. LirA not quite as dominant as last split. So but Apollo stepping up, so it just felt like a lot was in flux with this team over the course of the early split, whereas a lot of the other teams that, you know, were picking up a lot of wins, there was definitive like, oh my god, this guy's working out great. Darshan's, you know, like best split he's had in forever. And
right.
So it didn't quite feel like there was that kind of storyline with Envy, and I think that's why they might have been a little slept on.
Yeah, Nisqy this time around being in the lineup up against Jensen. Again, we talk about this guy as being one of the strongest laners in the league, if not the strongest laner here for C9. But Nisqy, how do you feel he dealt with him this time around on the Syndra?
We had talked a little bit earlier today, just, you know, off camera, about the use of subs and when are they good or bad. And I think this is one of those times where you can say, I actually like putting Nisqy in. He's someone who a lot of people say is a better individual player than Pyrion. And when you're up against C9, the big thing you're concerned about is your mid lane getting steamrolled. And Nisqy did a good job this time around. You know, he did have Syndra, probably the most
right. They gave him
champion.
a good matchup.
They gave him a good matchup, and they said, you know, mostly just hang on there. You know, we don't need you to smash Jensen. And you saw, you know, the crazy CSDs that we have for Jensen in that 10 minutes that just didn't accumulate this time around.
Right. And so instead, C9 decides to throw their attention to the top lane and kind of target Seraph. We saw the early attempted dive from Impact and Contractz didn't go in their favor, and because they weren't gaining advantages on the top side of the map, LirA was able to affect the bot side and help out Apollo down there, getting him rolling.
Yeah, overall, like a really well thought out game from LirA, not necessarily explosive, crazy early game you see with an Italy pick or something.
Still got first blood.
Yeah, still got first blood, importantly. And I think what was really critical was when he protected Seraph from that dive that you saw early on. Just because Renekton and Elise, it's relatively telegraphed, but it's still very hard to stop. And you saw Seraph still fall very far behind in CS, but if you throw a kill in there, some early turret damage, you could have a case where this game's getting snowballed on. So he covered that, goes bottom, gets Apollo a lead, and then they play a relatively controlled game out from there with those advantages.
And so here's the thing, and I'm noticing at least through today, and this week in particular, a lot of early Baron play. Even if the Barons aren't being secured, we're seeing a lot of action around the Baron, both with Kallistas and the new ability, you know, and that ability to execute, but also here, Envy getting a single pick and then choosing to go for that 23-minute Baron.
Just a little sloppy by Smoothie. There's a pretty obvious that they were around that area, just didn't think he was quite in threat range, but gets picked out there, and then Envy, with that pick, knowing that they kind of had vision control, they keep fishing a little bit. C9's being a little lax in terms of trying to move in there and get vision control. Contractz loses his flash, gets chunked out, and now you say, all right, well, with the jungler's flash down, he's going to have to really commit hard to potentially get a steal, so let's start this off and see what happens. And it just feels like C9 was not super respecting the fact that they can do this that quickly. Another big hook into some CC, forces another flash out. Easy decision to turn back onto the Baron and just kind of force it down.
Yeah, I think this is very indicative of growth for Envy in that moment there, we saw the entire team moving as a unit, right?
Right.
First to fish for the hook. Great, we got the pick. Now we're going to play the vision game for a moment. Cool. Now we start the Baron as 5. Now we turn as 5. Now we go back to Baron as 5. And so that is something that we've been missing from Envy in the past. And then it's about looking at how they close the games out. We've noticed that with Pyrion, they do seem to have more direction in closing out the game, particularly using things like the Talia wall to secure objectives. This time around, though, with that Baron under their belt, they pretty smoothly closed this game out.
Yeah, and I think you saw C9 trying to kind of call back shades of high with some of this crazy split pushing that they ended up doing, and for the most part, Envy responded well to it. This is the kind of stuff that can be very difficult to deal with when you're pushing in the bot lane, you have to TP back up to this top side. Nisqy's now behind the enemy lines as a Syndra, not exactly where you want to be.
Yep.
But they're able to mostly play this one well enough. Apollo stays in the bot side split pushing, and they're kiting this out, just trying to survive. And then they start getting people low enough that they actually have some kill threat here, and they realize that they can kind of turn back once this big stun comes in from Nisqy.
I do have to say, while this replay is playing out, we'll announce the player of the game. It goes to LirA. As you mentioned, it's not like his most explosive game, oh, I'm solo carrying the game, but he intelligently played it to know where on the map he needed to be. But while we talk about LirA, I do want to give a nod to Seraph as well, because he did have to absorb so much pressure in that top lane and then still be relevant in those team fights and guarding the split push.
That's the big thing, is you look at his CSD maybe and you're like, oh, he lost lane this game. That's kind of surprising. But you're against Renekton and Elise, the de facto kill you under your turret, pre-6 comp. And he survived that with the help of LirA early on. You know, fell behind maybe a little further than he should, but he was able to make teleport plays to join in and protect LirA on the bot side, kind of as a thank you later on.
Yes,
and
exactly.
he got picked off once in a side lane, which is pretty understandable. If that's the worst thing that's going to happen to you that game, I think people are going to be pretty all right with that.
It wasn't a glamorous job for Seraph, but he had to absorb the pressure so that LirA could do work on the flip side of the map. They come away with the victory there. We'll see if Cloud9 can even up the score when we come back with Game 2 versus Team Envy. Don't touch that browser. You're watching the North American LCS.
He swept, knows there's nothing there. Gets cast. Very nice ulti there. Nisqy, and he's going to look to interrupt the jump away as well. Nisqy still trying to escape, but is he long for this world? No.
Oh, I'm going. 야, Shen, 이것만 막아줘. 트리스타나 no jump, okay?
I stun in two. Tristana, no flash.
Impact thinking about going in for this fight, popping the ulti, but he's dragged in with the hook and bursted down. The damage from Apollo will seal his fate. The Feather Storm comes out, the feathers fly, the double kill for Apollo.